This is a book test. I love book tests. You know what that is? That is a magic trick that a mentalist will do with a book. Pretty simple. Usually they'll hand out a book or a magazine and have their spectator find a word on a random page, and they'll be able to mentally discern what that word or phrase is. This is no different. This is a very old book test. For some reason, tricks that are 100 years old are always so amazingly good. And this was no different. In fact, it's about 95 years old. It belongs to, or was published by, probably the most famous mentalist of all time, Theo Annemann. He went by Ted Annemann on stage. This is his book test. I changed it very little, but it's a great trick to do, and it's really easy. I'll show you what it looks like. Of course, it'd be better if I had a couple of spectators here, but this is a tutorial, so you have to play along with me. We're going to tell our spectator, I've got a book here I want you to hold on to. We're going to find a random page in that book, and we'll do that with this deck of cards. In fact, let's make sure we have a pretty good shuffled deck here. And we do. It doesn't matter actually, because we can mix it up a little bit, but what we'll do is I'm going to have you pick a card out of the middle of the deck anyway. In fact, I'm going to have you pick 2 cards, and I'll show you why in just a second. Just put your finger on the back of any card, and they will do that. They have a free choice. They can touch the back of any card. Let's say they touch this one. Say, now, before you pull that out, I want you to take a second card. You want the one to the left or the right of that one, and they would make that decision too. Let's say they take this one. They do have a free choice, and you would give them those cards that they freely chose and say, now what we're going to do is with those 2 cards, you're going to come up with a random number. Just remember, an ace is worth 1. You got 2 through 10, and then you've got a jack 11, queen is 12, and a king 13. So if in case you got a face card, just know how to add them together, and they'll do that. You will not see their cards. You won't need to. I'm going to show you in the camera for the sake of this tutorial. They're going to look at those cards, they're going to add them together and come up with a number. So I'll hold them there for long enough for you to add those two numbers together, or those 2 cards together, and come up with a number. Okay? So they will have come up with one. You tell your spectator, okay, now that you've got some kind of a number, I want you to go to that same page in the book. So they're going to take the book and they're going to turn to that page, whatever it is, and they're going to say, just hold it right there and to keep your finger on it, because we're going to come back to that. So your spectator will be holding the page at this particular value and say, now we need another number. We need a random number, because I want you to find a word on that page. Let's use some dice. I like to use dice, and we'll just throw the dice. We'll have another spectator do this, or they could do it. It doesn't matter. We'll throw it 3 times just to make sure we're not doing anything tricky with the dice. So on the 3rd roll, let's see, what number do we come up with? We came up with a 5 and a 1, which is 6. So now we tell our spectator, you've got your finger on some page in that book that you chose randomly from the card value. Now I want you to put your finger on the first word of that page and count over to the 6th word on that page. And they'll do that. They'll move their finger over to the 6th word. And that's the word I want you to be thinking about. And as they're thinking about that, you can play this up however you want to, be as dramatic as you want, depending on what the word they land on. It could be kind of a fun word. You will be able to reveal the word. In this case, the word is almost. That's what they would be thinking of, because they would have landed on page 15, which is what 9 and 6 is. And if you look on page 15 and you count over to the 6th word, you know you can't see that, but they would be able to count over to the 6th word is in fact the word almost. Now, again, this would be much easier to prove to you if I had spectators, but I'm going to show you how it works every time. They have a free choice on their 2 cards. The dice are not rigged, and we're ready to go. And the book is also not gimmicked. Okay, so how in the world would you possibly be able to do that? Well, Annemann teaches us how, and now it's my turn to teach you how. You don't have to use the dice if you don't want to. You can just have somebody come up with a number between, whatever you want, actually 1 and 20 if you want to do it that way. I like dice because I only have to work with 2 through 12 words on each of those pages, and so that makes it a little bit easier. Also, you don't even have to do this as a book test. If you want to get a magazine, you can do it with that, and instead of describing words, you can actually describe the pictures that are on the page they're looking at. And here's how. The basic principle in this is they're always going to get page 14 or 15. So that's the first part of the trick. So I know ahead of time that they're going to pick, and I've already looked in this book on what's on 14 and 15, And in fact, you can either memorize the first few words on each of those, because it's going to be a somewhat of a sentence anyway, even if it's a broken sentence. I chose to use a crib sheet. I choose a cheat sheet, and I just looked. You can have that hidden somewhere. You can palm it. You can put it in the back of a card box, whatever you want, out of sight. I'll show you what my cheat sheet looks like. But this is page 14 and 15 of this book. And on my cheat sheet, it looks like this, because I know that they're going to land on one of those pages. Let me hold this better, like this. That's what I did. I took an old card, basically, and put this on there. And in fact, I know on page 14, the 8th word is spoken. On page 15, the 3rd word is seemed. On page 14, the 12th word is she, etc. That's my cheat sheet, okay? So that's the preparation. Find a book that has pages 14 and 15 on it. Write down those first few words. I use 2 through 12 because we're using dice. I wrote them down. That's preparation number 1, okay? A book with words on it that you want to use, and the cheat sheet. Okay, so now how do we force them to pick a 14 and a 15? Well, that's all in the deck. Now this what I'm about to teach you here, this secret alone is worth the price of this video, because you could do so many things with this principle, and I don't think many people know this. Even magicians know that you can do this with a deck of cards. But you can actually stack a deck, and even though it is looks pretty well shuffled, it kind of is, it's actually stacked in a way that every 2 cards next to each other will always add up to either 14 or 15. I'm going to show you how to set that up. But let's just look really quick. We just kind of go down the list. Look, there's the 6 and the 9, and they add up to 15. The 9 and the 5 add up to 14. The 5 and the 10, 15. The 10 and the 4, 14. And so on down the line. Jacks 11, Queens 12, etc. So how do we get them in that order? It's really, really simple. The best way to explain it is to start with the ace. And by the way, the deck can be cut all you want because this is cyclical. So there'll always be any 2 cards together will always add up to 14 or 15. So in fact, you could even have them take the top and the bottom card if you want, and they will still add up to either 14 or 15. You saw what I did. I had them touch the back of one, then they could go either way. They could have the card to the left or the right. As long as the card next to the one they chose, again, you're forcing a 14 or 15. So here's how you set it up. First of all, let's talk about this half of the deck here. You'll notice that every other card in this stack is actually in ascending order. I've started with the ace in this case. Every other card is going to ascend all the way up to king. So we have an ace. Oh, by the way, suits don't matter. Don't even think about the suits. This is just about values. That's why it looks so shuffled. Anyway, every other card is ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to the king. Okay, so they're ascending every other card. And then the one in between is descending. So after the ace, we need a king to start the cycle. We're going to go king, and then every other card, queen, skip a card to jack, 10, 9, 7, etc. Descending all the way down to the ace. So that's all you have to do. You have to put the cards in that kind of an order. You can make a stack of ace through king here and a stack of king through ace here and just kind of pile them alternating. But as long as you end up with, you know, ace 2, 3, 4 through king, and then king, queen, jack on down, and then it starts all over. By the time you get down to the ace, right, or up to the king, you're back to this same cycle where you have the same cards, ace, king, and then a 2, queen, 3, jack, all the way back down to this king. Okay, that sounds way more confusing than it is. When I read about it, there was no pictures or anything. It was just in text, and it blew my mind. Like, what is he talking about? All these alternating and whatever. But it's really quite simple once you put it down on the table. Okay, so one of the things that gets kind of funky when you do this is you'll notice if you go ace 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Again, every other card. The 7s happen to bump into each other. When they converge, because the descending 7 and the ascending 7 come together. That's okay. 7 and 7 is 14. There's a reason for that. And on either side of them is an 8. So you have an 8, 7, 7, 8. And that will happen again over here too. That's totally fine. And it even looks shuffled. So that means you can cut the cards all you want. If you want to do a false shuffle, you can. I don't even think it's necessary because what you're going to do is have them pull the cards out of the middle of the deck anyway. So I like to go like this to say, let's make sure these are shuffled. Oh, it looks like they are, but let's mix them up a little bit. And what I say mix them up, what I'm doing is give them a quick cut. And then you say it doesn't matter because you're going to pull a card out of the center of the deck. So they have a free choice, and they really do. Not only a free choice, but they even can choose which card they pick next to the one they touch. So let's say they touch this card and say, wait, before you look at that, I want you to take a second card. You want the one to the right or the left. They choose whichever one they want. And again, it won't matter because any two cards next to each other in this deck will equal 14 or 15. In this case, it's 14, 12 plus 2. Now, as the magician, I wouldn't know that. Let's set those aside. Put these back over here and get rid of them. Now they've got, all I know as the magician, all I know is they have either a 14 or a 15. And I say, now I want you to take this book and I want you to turn to the page in that book. And the reason why I do that is because I want to see which side of the book they land on. So as they're looking for page 14, they're either going to look at it this way or this way. And just a quick glance and I can tell which one they have, either a 14 or 15. Now, that's how Ted Annemann used to do it, in fact. But I thought to myself, my luck would be I'd get somebody that doesn't do that and they do one of these. So I need an out. I need to know if I can't see which side they're looking at, I would just say this. Okay, so now what I want you to do is put your finger on the first word of that page. And if they go like this, we can see where the finger goes on this side of the book. I know they got the 14. Okay, do you see that first word? Okay, good. Just remember that. We'll come back to it. Now, that's all you need to know. We need to know which side of the book they're on, so we know it's 14 or 15. The next is to pick the number, and that's pretty simple. I like to roll the dice. I like to roll them 3 times. That way they're not, we're not using loaded dice or whatever. Whatever number they pick, in this case it's a 9, page 14, my crib is going to tell me the answer. I just very, very quickly looked at the page 14, word number 9. I know it's the word TO2. And I can play with that however I want to. I want you to count over 9 words with your finger on page 14. They're going to land on the word TO2, and we can play with that. I don't know. I can't tell if you're thinking of a number or a word. What is that? It's very small. It's either a small number or a small word. It must be a word. Oh, is it the number 2? No, it's the word 2. Whatever you want to do, depending on the words. Now, here's the fun thing about this, because you get to pick the book you do this with. Find a bunch of books and look at all the pages 14 and 15s and look what the first few words are to decide what kind of routine you're going to have. So you get to make the decision. You don't have to have a gimmicked book like a lot of book tests are. There's not really any memorizing unless you want to. Probably not hard to memorize 2 sentences. I like to cheat. But whatever you want to do. Or, like I said, do it as a magazine test, go memorize what's on pages 14 and 15, and you're good to go. So, bottom line, this is the secret to that whole trick, is the force of the 14 and 15. Oh, and I should mention, this will confuse you if I don't tell you this. After you've set this up, you're going to be leaving out 2 aces. It doesn't work. This is actually 50 cards, not 52. I'm glad I didn't forget to say that because it'll drive you crazy. What do I do with these 2 aces? You set them aside. So you're going to go ascending every other, descending every other. Do it again on this side. Set 2 aces aside. They're not part of this, and you're good to go. Okay? That is the Ted Annemann. I think I called it the Premier Book Test, but to be honest with you, I think it needs a fancier name than that, because that is some great mentalism that now you can do. And then you should have landed on a word. Did you land on a word? And they will have landed on a word. There. Take 2.